Good evening, everybody. It's Sunday evening, the 30th of January 2022, and today I'm joined by another colleague of Joe from Kent Badminton, Michael Stimson. How are you today?
Hi. Hi. Very well, thanks. And
Yeah, I'm
yourself?
really good, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Michael was just busy telling me about technology, and let's carry on with that conversation because I'm really fascinated. So tell me about this app for badminton. It sounds. I look at the Apple Watch all the time, and I had that, and my friend I play signals with, I was just saying, measures. He starts the activity. We play badminton, and after an hour, he says I've burned 892 calories, and it's not. I don't really. I find it really difficult to measure that. So tell me what is this app called? What is it?
The app's called it's called My Zone, and you get this thing called a My Zone belt. And what it does is it will measure your heart rate. It can measure your movement, but it gives you a really graphic. At the end of each exercise, you can see where you've been operating from your heart rate. So generally, your heart rate you'll set it a parameter. So whether it be from your resting heart rate, say 60, 70, going up to 150,
Yes.
200, wherever in the range it works for
Yes.
you. And they work it out. It's supported by an online crew that will set the parameters for you according to your age, etc., etc.
Ah.
Your biometrics as far as your
And when you
body
say it's a
makeup
belt,
and
what
your
is it? A
weight
belt
and
that goes
height.
around your chest, or?
Yes, a belt you just wear around your chest, and it has like an oval sort of chip sort of thing which goes in the middle of the
Yeah.
belt, and it just measures it. So what it does is it works out. It measures your heart rate obviously throughout the whole of the exercise. It measures your work intensity levels about how hard you've been working over that period of
Yes.
time. And it'll tell you the actual how many. It will calculate how many calories you've burned exactly. So
And is
I'll
that
just
for, is
bring
it
up something I know.
on that principle? Does that work on all sports then? Really?
Yeah, it'll work on all sports. So, like for me, I've got a resting heart rate according to this. My resting heart rate's around at sort of. It will give me a resting heart rate
I can't
criteria.
see that. Can you move it slightly
So
to one
I
side?
have
That's
like
a bit more the other way. Bit more. What is that? There we are. 54. Right. Okay. Cool. Okay.
So 54, it sets me a maximum heart rate of
I
180. I'll
say.
go above that. It will let you go above it, but it'll measure it. And then it tells you, as you can see on this, it'll tell you how long you spent in which zone.
Yes.
So where you can see, the greens, the yellows, and the red zones, and where you are and what you should be
Yes.
doing, and where you operate at. That's what it'll give you that. And then on a graphic side, it gives you your BMI, it gives you, all this sort of stuff, and it gives you your MUP, you'd say like how many MIPS. So I think the international guideline is you meant to do. I've done all right this month. I think I've done 4,500 or something. Is playing. I think a lot of that was done against the Steve Abbott and that mob when I was playing bloody doubles against them at the MCC
I
sort
just
of
want to have
thing
a
that
look at
we
that. What was that
arranged.
app called? My what?
My zone.
My zone.
I'm sort of
My
into
zone.
the computer side. Yeah, my zone. Yeah, I'm into the computer stuff or the sort of stuff of measuring what you're doing and
Follow your
training.
heart, find your squad. I know more and more of these apps are things like I've got quite a lot of things to do with like my I've got a new Garmin and it has a thing called a body battery, and based on your
Yep.
exercise and your activity, it kind of keeps an eye on kind of what you've got left in the tank. So when I think more and more they're going towards I'll come out of that. More and more they've gone towards when you think you're burned out, when actually this body battery shares, no, you've still got 40%, or you've still got X, Y, or Z, and that way when you're exercising, you think I'm absolutely burst, and then you look at your watch and it says actually no, you've still got about 50% of the energy that you have left, and it forces you to kind of carry on and commit more to it. It's amazing technology nowadays.
It's getting more and more science.
Yeah,
There's more and more things they're measuring, every time. And, is it pulsars
that's
that
right.
do
Pulsar,
one?
they're the ones that do that. They're the ones that do the heart bands for sure.
Yeah. And they're getting more and more sophisticated. I think at the end of the day, it's a combination. So when I play badminton, I can see the steps I've done from my
Yes.
Apple Watch. So I'll keep the Apple Watch on and see the steps. But the actual heart rate and stuff. Although it can be monitored through the Apple, it's not as
No.
accurate. So out of all the different ways of measuring your heart rate and recovery rates, the MyZone was, I think it was 99.4 or 99.5% accurate, which is a lot more than most. So I tend to go with that.
How long have
And
you
it's
been
also
looking
great
for?
if
How long have you
got
been
mates
looking for a solution for badminton? And are you into this? Is this your thing? Are you like the gadget? Are you a gadget man a
I've been
bit?
looking.
Yeah.
I'd say not so much a gadget, man. If I can find a solution for someone else to do it and I get all the benefits, I'll take that all day long.
And so, how did you find it? The app. Are you
So I found
okay?
it
Here's a
through
question for
Google.
you. Are you, I mean, I'm a techie man, right? I love watches. I love all that stuff, right? But are you satisfied with it? Okay, here's the question. I'm in sales, right? So they say, what is it you like about it? And as soon as you tell everybody what they like about it, they start telling you about what they don't like about it. That's human nature, apparently. If you say to somebody, what do you like about it? If you ask somebody, what do you like about it? That human nature says you will start talking about things you like about it. And after about 60 seconds, you'll immediately think about something that you don't like about it. Is there anything like that there?
I think nothing's perfect. I don't like the fact that it doesn't give me. It gives me heart rate. It gives me calorie burn. If it was to give me the
Yeah.
steps and the actual movement and speed of movement, which you can get on other things, the problem is with badminton is on a badminton court the movement is very, very
Sporadic,
quick,
yeah.
but it's very short. Therefore, it is when I'm playing, that's for sure. But generally people move. I see the singles players, the youngsters playing. I go, no, it's not on. But you see them. You see a person move on court, it might only be a yard. Now, whether the GPS is good
No,
enough to
no.
measure that distance and to give you an accurate of your speed of acceleration, etc., it doesn't really do that. And I don't think there's anything out there that does do that. But that's going to be the next thing. And you'll be plotting that. You'll be measuring that. It's like how many steps have you taken on the badminton court? Now, if I'm playing for 2 hours and we're playing we're playing doubles, we're playing a hard game, I'll do 6,000 steps,
Yeah,
7,000
no.
steps, but I'll burn almost 3,000 calories if I'm pushing it because my heart rate will be at 180 to 190. You'll be in that area, and that means that I suppose it's a lot more intense. It's almost like badminton's like a hit. And I remember when I was in the States, they had done a study on different sports and how hard they were playing at a very good level, at a professional level, and which were the hardest sports to play physically for your body. And I don't remember the whole 1 till 10, but number 1 was badminton, number 2 was basketball, and then there was a tail off between 3, 4, 5, and whatever. And I remember, and I was saying, well, how comes badminton's up there? And the sports scientists were saying it's because it's not just linear. So you've got badminton's like the 400 meters of sprint of an actual track event, out of the track events, because it's sprint, it's endurance. But the big difference between and what makes the sports even harder is because you're going up and down. It's not just a linear plane. So as a sport, you're exploding into a sprint. You've got no rest because it's continuous, or it should be continuous play. Although looking at some of the international guys, I think they have about 5 minutes between points. But they literally, it used to be continuous, and it was the length of time you were playing with the old scoring system in particular. You didn't get a let up, so it was a very, very tough sport from a
Can
physical
we go
point
back
of
to
view.
talking about your starting in badminton, please? That'd be if we could do that. So I'll just start
Of
off with
course,
your you're 54, right? You said you mentioned that, right? Do you have any brothers or
yeah,
sisters that play badminton?
no.
Parents?
Parents played. Mum played really more than dad. They used to go along to a local badminton club. They didn't play it competitively. They played it socially. They weren't really involved with the sport at any competitive level. My mother was very competitive at sports. She was
Right.
an athletics background, and she competed at quite a high level at athletics before she injured her back. So mum was the really sporty one. Dad was very, very good at stuff, but just didn't have a competitive bone in his body.
What
So
what
I
age
got
did
that
your
from
mum
mum
injure her
for
back
sure.
and get out of it? What age was she?
She was about
Wow.
early 20s, and basically when she carried on playing badminton, she fell
Oh
down the
my
stairs and
goodness.
slipped 7 discs. So it was like, and she used to run with like the Chataway twins and Sir Roger Bannister. She was in
Wow.
a crowd of runners with them, and she started up some athletic Croydon Harriers women's division. So she started a lot of the women's sport with that. And then she couldn't do it afterwards. She ran for Surrey, and I don't know if she ran for England, but
Oh yeah.
she was at that sort of level. And then she had to stop after the fall. So I was always very lucky in that I got taken everywhere for sport. If it
Yeah.
involved sport, it was never a
And did
problem.
you get into and so were you into athletics as well beforehand? Did she get you into running and stuff like that?
Yeah, I got myself into sport. I was naturally sporty. I was. They always say you excel at what you enjoy, and I enjoyed sport. Sport was my sort of gift. So I was very fortunate. I was the kid everyone at school hated when it came to sport, because if I picked up something to go and do it for the first time, it looked like I'd done it for a while. So I had to work a lot harder at
Were
my
you?
academic side of things, where a lot of people found that really easy. I'm okay, I'm a mathematician. I'm good at maths and stuff, but I'm slightly dyslexic, so I wasn't great with, I had to work really hard at my reading and writing, and but sport was never an issue. So I was at a school that allowed us to play a lot of sports, and I played a few sports to a
And what
reasonable
age
level
did
as
you
a
start
junior.
badminton specifically?
So I started at 9. What it was there used to be a thing at the local sports centre called Junior Activities, which is what I think, which basically the sports centre, which was owned by the council, and the manager who used to run it used to be a retired RAF PT guy. And what they used to do is used to be, that's how long ago, it used to be 10p for an hour, and they used to do it in age groups. Sort of, they used to do under 12s and then do the 12 to 16s, and I was quite tall at that age, so I used to stay and try and do both sessions. But they'd set up the whole sports centre for you to go in and try. So you could do squash, you could do badminton, you could do trampolining, you could do anything. And so I tried all these sports when I was probably about 8 or 9. I was trying them, and I was pretty good at badminton at that age, but my tennis was better, so I played more tennis. But I played
And was
badminton,
there somebody
yeah, probably about 9.
specific to badminton at the one of the PTs that were into badminton specifically, or was it just one of the things that they offered?
No, it was just one of the things that they offered, and then
Yeah,
because
good.
Mum played, I had a touch, but my football was pretty good, so I was more into that, and I played badminton for a bit
Aren't
of
they great,
fun at
these
that point.
incentives that they come up with, occasionally to do multiple sports for children to try different pursuits and that kind of thing. And they did one for the Olympics local to me recently, for the Olympics, last Olympics, and my son got into judo on the back of it. And they had a sticker system. They made a list of all the different sports they could do. They went to all the local sports clubs and coaches and that kind of thing for all the different pursuits, and they got a sheet of paper and they put a little sticky thing next to it, a little space to say, have you tried it? And at the end of the term, they're literally running up to the Olympics. They said, okay, how many stars have you got? And each sport was a star, and it's incredible stuff. I think that's it's such a way forward, don't you think so, for children?
I, I, I think even if when you do specialize, you'll go down and you'll specialize in one sport. I think it's really
I
important that you've
agree.
tried lots of different sports. I think firstly, you you acquire different skill sets from every sport, and you look at a sport and you analyze it. So if you've analyzed more than one sport, you can generally pick up, oh, if I do this, I'm going to be better at a sprint. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to jump a bit higher, or I'm going to do this, and you learn. And as a kid, biometrically and technically, as long as you taught the sports correctly, you will you will then become intuitive when you actually start to play at a higher level, because you'll see things at different levels because of the experience you picked up maybe at something else, because you'll look at it differently.
And how did you move on from that how long did you play for? Did you obviously into a lot of different sports at the time? How did you narrow down to badminton, or did you do a lot of sports in parallel?
So I suppose from when I was 12 to 14 in particular, I think I was doing 3 sports at an international level and sort of 12 sort of county level. So it doesn't mean to say that they varied. I mean, it was sort of badminton, squash,
Racket, yeah, it's good,
tennis,
isn't it?
football, which was the main sport. So I did the rackets. I was playing pretty well, and then we used to do cross country running. Because our school headmaster, I think he had a sadistic thing where we made us go and do. You know, it didn't matter if it was raining, it was snowing. If it was snowing, that I'm not having you in the sports hall mucking up
Cross
my floor.
country,
You're all going for a run. So we knew as soon as it was cross country run, whether you liked it or not. The girls seemed to get let off, which, you know, I'm sorry, but that wasn't right. But the guys were like, they knew if it was raining and stuff, the girls were inside and we were going for a run. So we used to have to do cross country runs at least once a week. So, which was great, you know, in respect of you just learn, you know, you learn to just get on with things. So we did that. So the school had a really good cross country team, which a lot of us ran for county level at that. It wasn't something, but it was a byproduct. Funnily enough, it was a byproduct of my football. It was a byproduct of the badminton that I was doing, because you had to train to get the level of fitness to compete at a better level.
And who pushed you for that? Who do you think? Who was
Again,
your? Did you have a coach? Was it who was? Was it? Were you just motivated in yourself, Michael, to get fit, or was it? Or was there somebody that said you have to do this or you have to do that, or you know, was it all in yourself? Oh.
I don't. Yeah, it was within myself, because I don't think it was never about getting fit. That wasn't really something I think our generation had. I don't think I was never conscious of trying to get fit. It was a conscious of, could I do it quicker, faster? It was compete. It's compete, and the pleasure I used to get was out of competing. And if if you can't compete against yourself, it's like, okay, I did that run in 15 minutes. Can I do it in 14 minutes, 59 seconds? Can I beat that? Can I do that a bit better? Can I be quicker? Why wasn't I not pushing myself hard enough to break that? And you just set those yourself, and they're goals you set yourself. No one else can do it for you.
So who was that? There must have been somebody in the background, a teacher, your mum. What was it? What forces you? I mean, where did the competitive side come from? Where did you become so competitive?
I think I always was. I think it's an inherited from mum. Yeah. It was very much. I didn't need motivation, and it's weird. I just.
And is that just, sorry? Is that just because? Yeah, I was going to say, is that because you lost? Do you remember a time when you lost really badly and you thought, I need to fight this?
I was. Many times I've lost badly. Many times I've not been happy, but every time I come off it, I go, right, I'm going to train harder. I'm going to do it better. I just can't. I think there was no, and it's a big debate about, do you protect, especially with children, whether you protect them through that competitive edge, because I think we used to have tournaments. I think the classic example is, I remember going to tournaments, and there was this fear factor losing, because you play a tournament. If you lost in the first round, you got into a plate. There were no groups. There was no round robin games. Basically, you knew you'd get 2 games, because you would go play your first round. If you got knocked out, a large proportion of tournaments used to have a plate, but a large tournaments, the better tournaments, didn't have a plate if you went home. So you had to turn up and just play, and there was no, perform. Oh, I've lost that one, but I can win the next couple of matches in a box and go up. There's no round robin. You were just going home. So we sort of grew up with that mentality. Like, you're on call, you're going at 100 miles an hour, bang, off you go. 0 to 60, off you go, and your mental psyche is trained for that. And the higher, or the higher up the ladder you go, the more that becomes your way to do it. And I've had this conversation with a number of people. A lot of people love match play, playing matches and all the rest of it. I personally prefer tournaments. I thrive on let's let's just go and let's perform and let's see if we can win or lose. And obviously you lose more than you win. Otherwise, but that thrill of being on court, that adrenaline, that rush of being on court and going, right, if I don't win this,
and how big? Can I ask how big was badminton in your area? Where are you from?
From Kent, from a place I grew up in a place near Gravesend in Kent, and badminton was reasonable there. It wasn't exceptional. It didn't have a hub like a Wimbledon, or it didn't have a hub, as you can get in some other places. But it was reasonable. And we were very lucky at Dartford. There was a club called Dartford YMCA, which I wasn't accepted into to begin with. I got into it in the end, but which was basically where a lot of the England B team or some of the
what age was that when you were trying to get in and you got turned back?
I was about 14, and it had people like Ray Rowe, Ray Sharp. It had basically the Kent sort of first senior team, and at the time Kent and Yorkshire were the two.
Can I go back? Can I go back a second, Michael?
And I wasn't really...
when you went to that club at 14 years old.
Yeah.
First of all, how did you know about it? How did you trial for it? And how did you find out that you weren't good enough?
I think what happened was I'd heard about the club. I played at another club called Northfleet Colts, which was really, it was called the Sausage Factory. Basically, it used to produce a lot of the juniors. So a lot of the juniors, yeah. So basically, every county needs a sausage factory. You don't want to know how it's done, but you basically need a sausage factory, which is basically this raw meat comes in and some product.
You don't want to know how it's done.
But it comes out the other side. They taste great. It's great when they're great. They look amazing. Champion sausages. But you do not want to know how it's made in between.
I've never heard that expression before, but I'll remember that.
So basically you get this lot of little geeky guys get in there, sort of 10, 11 years of age, and they're doing everything wrong. You're not holding the racket right. Your footwork's dreadful. And they used to start us off. And then the ones that wanted to go up and try and play at a higher level, you've got to push. And it's like, I had this argument. It's not an argument. I had this debate. To call it a debate. I don't think one coach can never do it all as far as any sport. Take a person, and every coach will have a different gift or talent. Some would be great at coaching movement, some would be great for head and tactics, some would be great for teaching shots. And as a player, I don't understand why people criticize some players for moving from one coach to another coach, because you pick up bits from the whole lot. You'll have a general coach that may be able to help you keep in shape and whatever, but if you've got a weakness in a shot, why would you not go to the person who's best at
I've interviewed a lot of players and a lot of coaches, and they're all, most are all very, very open for their players to see different coaches, and there's not a recipe. One person can be a very, very physical coach and be quite somebody, maybe you need somebody to push you very hard for the physical side. You might need somebody that's particularly good on the mental side. You might get somebody good on the technique side, and it's all three different. I don't think you can have too much, to be honest. So no, I agree.
I think what will happen is from the age of 12, I was 11 or 12, 11. I was 11. I just got into senior school, and for the first 2 terms, I basically at badminton used to be able to beat the teachers, because they're all like lower club level players, teachers, and we'd go into sports or Friday night after school's activity. I'd never been coached. I'd never played it properly. I just had a reasonable talent, so therefore I used to win and beat them. And the teachers didn't like that. And then all of a sudden, I get another kid joined our school, and a lifelong friend, but he basically came into school, and I used to be very tight, and he's going, the teacher said, you've got to play this kid, you've got to play him. I went, I'll play him. Yeah, okay, whatever. And I had my ass well and truly kicked. It was like I lost 15-1 that first week. And I played about 3 games, and I never got more than 2 or 3. And he was a county badminton player. He'd come out of, he used to live at Alchford. He played for Buckinghamshire. and he was, a very, very good player. And I really found out at that point I really didn't know how to play badminton. So I asked him, "Where do you play badminton?" He said, "Oh, this place called Northleigh Colts." I went, "Oh, okay." I got my mum to take me over there, and I started playing a bit. And my goal was every week I wanted to get more points off him.
What was his name?
To the point where I could beat him. And it took me 2 years. Jamie Radford. And he was just, heads and shoulders above me at that time. And I'm like, no, this I'm not having this. And I'm just like, I cannot, as I said, it's something inside. I can do better. I will be better. I'm going to beat him. And I set that as a little target. And that was just basically how it started off. And then we played the same club. We played doubles together. We did really well. And then I wanted to get better still. And in order to do that, I needed to get better play because I started to take.
So he was the same age as you, said. Did you say that?
14. Yeah, literally. He was just slightly younger, school year younger.
Months
but
apart.
We were literally within 3 or 4 months of each other's birthday. And in the end, I ended up beating him, which was nice. But it took me 2 years to get there. But I just, every step of the way, I was like, no, I'm not losing. And we always had.
How often did you play? Do you remember?
Games. And, so I used to play. I used to play a lot of sport. So I think I did 4 times a week at badminton. I did. It was 4. Yeah, I think badminton was 4. That was the one I took the least amount. I did the least amount of play. Was badminton, which was 4 hours, and it'd be 2-hour sessions generally. We used to do a Monday, a Friday, and then Sunday around, depending on my football, I'd do either 4 or 5 hours.
I guess it was very local to where you lived then.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was about 5 miles away. My mum and dad basically permanently had a taxi sign on top of their car. It was Taxi Mike, and they spent every night. They used to spend every night outside of some sports city, and normally you'd go to 2 or 3 a night. So what would happen would after school I'd get football. I played county in sort of like England schoolboy football. So I then got into a Premier team, which was first division team at the time as an apprentice. So I have to go play football. Finish the football. On the way back, we'd stop, and then I'd do the next sport, whether it be swimming, whether it be badminton or tennis. So I'd normally do 2 to 3 sports in an evening, or 2 sports, and then I'd fit the school work in as well. God knows how. I don't even know how I did it. But I used to get up at like 6 a.m. and go for a run every day. From the age of probably around about 11, and I'd be doing some exercises. And at school at break time, I was doing. I used to get in trouble to teach that. I'd whip into this. I was trying to get fit to play badminton in particular at a really decent level. You used to have the old school benches, and you used to be able to jump on top of them, jump over them, and do all these exercises that we used to get given. And I'd be in there at break time, so everyone would be going out to the playground, and I would sneak into the sports hall, get one of the sports benches, to start doing the set of routines that I'd do to train. And that was always my mentality. I've got to be as fit as I can to play this. Then
was there anybody that taught you those?
We did that sort of stuff.
Taught you those routines, those exercises specific to badminton? The bench, jumping over the bench, that stuff. Where did you learn what you should be doing to train?
So it was kind of interesting. I was really lucky. I basically had 3 breaks. Firstly, I'm a persistent little sod, and that if I get turned down, it's not necessarily going to say no. I'm not going to go back and try and harass you. So, like with the club at Dartford YMCA, I went over the first time, and they're like, "Oh, you're not really going to be good." And then I'd go back the second time. Then I'd go back the third time, and I wasn't going to be invited. I just turned up and went.
And every time you went, they said you're not good enough.
Yeah. They were basically saying, "Yeah, you're not there yet," but they could see that there was a thing. And I played, and I got into so a classic example is I got into the county junior under 14s, and I remember getting on my bike. I found out that one of the guys that ran the county junior team was owned a sports shop in Maidstone, which was basically a bike and a train ride away. So I used to get on my bike, and I went over to that guy's sports shop. And by the time I left that sports shop, I talked him into inviting me along to one of the county playing training sessions. And I then went along, and I played reasonably well, so they kept me.
Nice.
They said, "Okay, yeah, you can come back."
So were you the weakest? Were you the weakest there?
And I remember, oh God, I was definitely bottom out of the ones that there. They only used to have maybe 4 or 5. They used to have 5, maximum 6 in each age group, boys and 6 girls. And I was bottom 2. Singles, I could probably be number 5, and doubles, I was probably number 6 when I first started there. And I just like, well, I'm not, I'll work it, but I'm in there. I'm going to get the games and I'll improve. So that's how it started. And then I remember going back to school and so, I've been accepted into the county team, into the county squad. And the guy who used to run Northleigh Colts got a phone call from my headmaster saying, Mike's just come in and said he's managed to get into the county badminton team. And the guy, Ken Shuttles, who was the grammar school, that was the next school I was going to go to, he was like the guy who ran that badminton in our area, teacher at school, said, no, he's not in the county team. He's not in the county team. And then I got one of the sports teachers at school pull me up. He goes, hold on, Mike. He said, you're not in that. I said, well, yes, I am. And you could only get a county tracksuit if you were selected to play for the county and in the county team. So you get a county tracksuit. So I went in the next day, and I went in with my Kent Badminton tracksuit, as an absolute plonker would, when I went to the next sports session. We were training after school. And they were like, how'd you get that? I said, I told you I got into the squad, but it was that sort of thing. And then we had 2 other big things for me. Firstly, I think was I managed to Nick Yates, who was I think currently at that time the England #1, needed some idiot youngster to run around and just when he was training, just to basically just be a sacrificial lamb who would just keep on making him so he could do different shots with fitness. And my fitness level was pretty good. So I said, Nick, would you do a bit of coaching with me? And he goes, well, I haven't got really time for that because I'm playing full time, blah, blah, blah. But I know you're hit with me, which is great. And there's not many people who would do that and do the training with me. Like when we're doing shuttle runs and stuff, I'd do that with him because I'd suffer for that sort of punishment. And Paul Wetnell was his coach. And after about 3 or 4 attempts, I'd got a few results at sort of national competitions that I'd done okay, got to quarterfinals or semi-finals. And Paul eventually weakened and said, okay, I'll give you some coaching, because Paul was running the national team at the time and didn't really do coaching for many people other than Nick and up at Milton Keynes. So I taught myself into doing that sort of coaching, and then I taught myself into getting Paul to do it. So I was somebody who wanted
always asking,
and always wanted to improve. Yeah, because and I think it's the same in life, because you're going to fail at things, and it's how you respond to that, I think, is the difference between where you end up in whatever you're doing in life.
It's very good. I mean, it's very good for, I think there's a lot of, but badminton brings a lot of, well, I guess sport as a whole makes people competitive, makes you determined, makes you passionate about things. And I think it's for me, it's great. Tell me about going back to questions. What was your first badminton racket?
First badminton racket, proper badminton racket, was the one I nicked off Mum's, because Mum came home one day and she didn't have one. And it was a Yonex Blacken. And basically, it was Mum's pride and joy. And she went to play one night and found it wasn't in her bag. And I think she knew where it'd gone at that point, even. And it wasn't coming back either.
So where is when you first played? We got that. Where did you first start playing? Got that first racket. The name of the first. What was the name of the club? You said the first club you played at.
The first club was North.
What was the hall like? Low or high, or was it a good sports hall, or was it?
No, it was a traditional. It was a solid floor, tiled floor, but it was a proper.
Was it? Oh, that's good.
Proper height hall.
That's good. Yeah.
So it was a proper sports hall. Yeah, it was a decent side height hall, so that was all good. Spotlights were quite good.
I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people. It was pretty bad. Your first. Do you remember how much it cost? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was
Trophy, yeah. I
20p.
think that's what we played. And the shuttles. What kind of shuttles did you play with?
So we played. They used to have plastics, and juniors and seniors used to have the feathers. But basically, the plastics they were good quality plastics. They were RSL or Yonex, but they were the
Yeah,
cork
another one.
based
Yeah, blue
plastics.
strip, blue stripper on the money. I'm sure they're Carltons. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
blue strip around.
So who
Correct.
would you
Yeah.
say your first coach was? Proper? Would you say that you had who coached you? Who was the first person that taught you how to hold a racket, that stuff?
For, I think the first coach for me, I would say, was a guy in Kent called Vance Young. He was the first sort of the first sort of person that used to do the training at Northleet Colts. He was the coach there. And he's still probably, I think, one of the best shot, or he was at the time, one of the best shot coach, badminton shot coaches. First, actually, no, there was a coach before then. This will bring back memories for some people. They'll know this guy. The guy who taught me shots to begin was a guy called Warwick Shute, and it was at Medway Badminton Association. And I forgot about this Medway Badminton Association. He was my first coach that I had individual coaching sessions with. And he was an ex-England international. And I think if you mention to some of the older generation, if you heard of Warwick Shute, they'd all go, yes,
Yeah.
absolute gentleman. Always played with a tank top on. Always had one of those sweaters on. No matter how hot or how much he ran, always had that on.
Fantastic.
Absolute gentleman.
So he was your first coach. Good. I remember your first ever tournament. Your first tournament. And trophy. Okay, you've got. It's not a tournament, but you've got to have won. The first time you won. That's the question.
That would have been one region. Oh god, it's either the Kent restricted, junior restricted, or a Medway. I won a couple there. I won the county doubles title. I think was the first one I won.
Do you still have the trophy?
Probably under 14 or under 16. No, the little sods made you give it back. I could have melted it down for a bit of silver value at that point.
Did it also? Yeah, I never asked you really about your event. Did you play singles or doubles? Or do you know what? As a child, I don't remember learning doubles. I didn't never learn doubles as a child. I played singles, and nobody ever coached me when I was a child up till the age of whatever. I went to county coaching. I never had any doubles coaching ever. In fact.
So I was really lucky. I played all three disciplines because we had to. Because if you were going away for a like a county match or whatever, or even if you were going up, playing an international tournament, you'd play all three disciplines. Unlike now, where they're told, "Oh, you can't be good at all three." Well, there is to a certain degree an overlap in all three disciplines. I think personally, mix from a man's point of view, mix is the most technical of the three disciplines, and you have to have the most shots and the most feel. I feel singles is another is quite tactical, but I wouldn't say it's particularly more tactical than doubles. I think it is just physically tougher from a point of view of mentally and physically, because you're on your own and there's no support.
Do you remember? Do you remember being taught doubles?
Yes, I got taught doubles, and that happened when I went to. I mean, this guy at Northleet Colts used to teach us a bit about
that's what I
rotation.
That's what I've missed.
The real tactics, I got that from the age of sort of 13, 14. I got that, and I immediately went into playing adults. So I think one of the big things I say is we shelter the kids too much from playing adults really young. If you start them playing against adults and against the vets who have got all that knowledge, the vets will pass it on. And I remember one of the biggest lessons I got, which made me look at badminton completely differently from hitting shots, was Ray Sharp, Dartford YMCA, was getting fed up of me not getting the shuttle on the floor at certain times because I'd be hitting out the side. I'd be trying to hit two bigger angles. And he went up and put his racket on the net and said, "You see."
Is that the similar idea to golf? You're standing at a golf tee and 1 inch, what did they say? 1 inch wrong the tee is 100 yards wrong on the fairway. Similar
Correct.
idea to that, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, same sort of thing. So it's, but you know, if you don't know about it, how do you find out? You only find out from somebody else helping you and someone else giving you some of their time to teach you it. And that's what I got from certain people, and little snippets. I was like a sponge. I think all kids are like a sponge at that age. You know, they're always going to pick stuff up.
But you know, when you go back to when you look at your history, somebody at some point, you know, maybe you weren't good enough, but somebody at some point gave you a chance and said, all right, come along. Where nowadays, I don't know if that exists so much. I think patience is gone. Everybody, you know, in a lot of clubs, they want the best games all the time, and they see one sniff of somebody that's below standard, and, oh, then they spoil my night. I don't want to be in with him. I don't want to be on with him. And that kind of thing happens all the time. And I think, you know, there's patience is kind of not gone. I would think everybody, well, certainly where I am, everybody wants to play the best game, right? No question. You know, when the rackets are down there, you pick the best people in the hall, and that's what you do. And if they're sitting off, you pick the best people every single time. But it's a really hard one. I just think it's a really difficult one for people to have patience.
I think at the end of the day, you're right. The two words that are missing is patience and consideration for others, because when you start a sport or you something, you're going to be the worst. When you walk in the room, if you've not done it before, generally chances are you're going to be the bottom third of the class. But people will develop at different rates and at different speeds. And you have to understand, and it's not just sport, that's life, that's business, that's personal relationships. When you mature, when you get better at something, it's not something that happens at everybody at the same speed. So I actually think they cut people off at the wrong time. I think if someone's got a talent, you can see the talent. How that talent's developed is down to them, but it's also down to the environment they're in. And someone will go, you see we lose a lot of players when they come out of juniors and they don't transmit immediately into senior success. We used to have it from going in different age groups. So we used to play two age groups. So we played an under 14, we used to be evens, under 14s, under 16s. You could get to the finals and semi-finals of all the open tournaments in the country in under 14. You go and play under 16s, you're getting knocked out the first round because you just come up with someone bigger, stronger, and beat you. And you get that transition, and people have to learn to handle that, because you can only win by having first loss. Because if you don't lose, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And if you want to get to the top, as I say, it's tough getting to the top. It's tough staying there. Tough staying there.
I think the key thing is you have to have.
That's down to
I think the key thing is, for me anyway, in my opinion, is to have somebody that's kind of involved in running a club and people turning up, and you know, people sending messages saying, I used to play competitively, I used to play really well, and I used to play X, Y, and Z, and they come and you think it's not really. I think the key, you know, I guess the key is for there to be a good, strong infrastructure of different clubs or different locations that you can play badminton, where you don't have to say you're not good enough. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than somebody saying you're not good enough, go away and get better and then come back. Because that never happens. That person never happens. They come away with a bitter taste. I had it recently. Somebody has a bitter taste and they go away and they say, I don't care how good I get, I'm never going to go there. I'm never going to go. You know, that's just... That happens. I think if there was some kind of tiered, I guess coaching. People say, you know, go and get some coaching, go get some lessons, and I think as long as everybody has if there was some form of, I know there's social competitive. So there's that, isn't there? You know, this is a competitive club, this is a social club, this is a social competitive club, which means that's my club. I would say is social competitive. We like a laugh. We're very competitive. We like a laugh. We're by no means purely social. And social is, you know, go and meeting people on a Wednesday night and just for, you know, do you understand what I mean? It's, So it's the balance. It's we like a laugh, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're not going to stress ourselves on a club. So I know.
Well, we have. There's a club that we play at, or I play at. And I know Joe plays. We play at CMP, which is at the Surrey club, and they have every night they have graded sessions. So there'll be like the top grades 1 through 5.
Really?
Each night they'll have a different grade, and
It's good.
I think that system works really well. Now, it means it's two things. It means people get good games. So you don't get that thing where people aren't having good games during the evening. At the same point, you're always going to have a stronger end of the grade and a weaker end of the grade. Now, when I started, in certain areas, I'd always be the strongest, and then now I'm probably one of the weaker guys because I'm older, but I've got the tactics, etc., to handle it. But I think this is what's missing in this sport is that, again, we come back to the development of person, especially at junior level. You suffer with two main things. Firstly, you suffer the ones that are mollycoddled and then aren't exposed to any sort of real competition, and they're taken off into some elite world, and they're not used to handling
general
failure.
Yeah.
And they don't get strong. But at every level, every level.
So sorry, going back to my last question about your history. I'm sorry, we've been on for 45 minutes already. It's incredible. Who was your main competition growing up? You mentioned a chap there you played with for a couple of years, and he was great. What was his name? What would you think? Yeah.
No, that is Jamie Rafford. No, my main there were three main competitors that I had growing up as far as sport was concerned in badminton. One of them that I still very good friends with, and when I started playing again, he helped me back, was a guy, Peter Knowles, who was about 2 years younger than me. And I used to play doubles with him and also train with him on singles. Him and I used to train in Kent at singles together. And he went on to be England #1, I think, and was pretty good at senior level.
So was he the guy? So he was the guy that you were trying to beat when you played. You determined to try and beat him.
No, he's the one I was trying not to lose to, because being 2 years older, I was a little bit ahead of the curve, and he always wanted to beat me. And I remember when I was sort of 17, and he was really starting that, because obviously as you get older, you get more strength, and he was going to kick my butt sooner rather than later. And I played one of the last tournaments I played before I went off to the States to go and play tennis. Basically, I played him, and he was always England #1, sort of under 14, under 16. And I was sort of 5 or 6 in the time for the older age group at singles, which wasn't my best event, but it was singles. And basically, I beat him at the last sort of tournament just before I went out to the States. And I remember saying to him, I said, there you go. You thought you were going to beat me, but you didn't get there in the end. And his mum just, give him another 6 months, you'll have you. And I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. And I'm thinking you'd have me in about 2 weeks, because I had to play out of my skin to win that game. And I was like, I'm playing doubles and mixed from now on, and singles I'm going to lead. But I also used to play with who became a very close friend, and I worked with him in the city later on, was a guy called Anders Newson. And Anders and I were
Danish
friends. He ended up playing a lot with his English. No, he was English. He's Danish mum and dad. He played for England, Commonwealth and stuff. He was, but he was such a nice man. Unfortunately, he died very young with throat cancer. And there's a big foundation which he does, it's called the Anders Nilsson Foundation. Nick Pontin and Steve will all know Anders. So Anders used to play at Wimbledon. So we used to go over I used to travel from Kent over, because I couldn't get the games. I used to travel over, and Anders and I used to play together on a Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, sometimes over at Wimbledon. Or we used to travel down to Hampshire to go and play down in Portsmouth with the bunch there, because the rest of the sort of top juniors were from Hampshire at that time. So we used to go down there and get games. But I remember very fondly that Anders was the guy that I used to really him and I used to have Titanic
nice.
battles all the time.
And how did you get into tennis, Mike?
So I got into tennis probably a similar sort of age, when I was sort of 8 or 9. I used to watch Wimbledon as everybody else did on the TV, and I used to bang a ball. And it's the same with football and stuff. I used to kick a ball. I'd be doing something. I couldn't sit still. I was never one of those people who could sit still. So I used to bang a ball with Dad's old wooden racket up against the side of the house and drive him nuts with the bang bang of the tennis ball against the wall into the living room, probably. But I started that. There was a local club that was a good club, did juniors, welcome everybody, and I started at that. And I happened to be reasonably good at it. So I sort of, again, one of those things, picked up a sport, happened to be okay at it, was determined to always try and get better at it. So I sort of went.
And what was that about? So what did you do when you, with school and stuff, when you left school, what did you sound like you're mad on sport, maybe not academic, but did you just want to do something to do with sport, and did you see a future just being in sport? What did you think of that when you're at school and having to study for X, Y, and Z? What was your thoughts?
So so basically I was signed at Arsenal when I was very young.
Right.
I was quite a good football player. So I'd signed a contract, and I'd actually signed a pro contract. I was going to go and be a professional football player. That was what I was going to do for a living.
So when you're at school, people are saying
I'd gone
you
through.
got
I was very
occupational
fortunate.
health, you got the your employment guidance teachers and all that stuff at school, and they'd say, "What are you going to do?" And you'd say, "I'm going to be a professional footballer," and they'd say, "All right, okay then." What about that?
Funny enough, I always wanted to be, through tennis, and this was one of the things, through tennis, I wanted to be. I'd got exposed to a lot of sort of stockbrokers and stuff, in people in London. My tennis partner, one of my tennis partners at the time, he at county level, his dad owned or was a partner in a stockbroking firm. So I thought I was going to go into banking if I didn't do football, and from a stockbroking side of things. And I used to read the FT and stuff because mum was like an accountant. So basically, I used to be looking at stock prices, share prices, and wondering what the hell was. And I loved all that. So I sort of knew I didn't do sport professionally. I'd want to go into stockbroking or trading in particular. And I ended up trading. That's what I ended up doing professionally for my first part of my professional life. Yeah. So I basically was doing that, but I'd got a pro contract for football, and then I got injured, and basically I'd got tackled and I chipped my femur, and it all healed perfectly. But I was 16. I'd done my O levels, and I'd signed this, and I basically was staying on to do A levels if I didn't go and do the football. So I was just starting A levels, but I signed with Arsenal, and I chipped my femur. I did 6 months in a wheelchair and about 2 months on crutches. All healed up. Arsenal turned around to me and said, "Yeah, it's healed beautifully. We're really pleased with it. But our medical officers are saying that you're a goalkeeper. You're diving on your knees all the time. We don't know whether we can invest in you to do that." So I had to make a decision then what I was going to do. So I very fortunately got offered collegiate tennis in the States. There was no money in badminton, so there was no point me trying to make a living out of badminton, because you just couldn't do it, in my personal opinion. Time, I don't think you can really do it now, but in this country. So I had a choice: stay in the UK, try and make it as best I can at badminton, or go and live on a beach playing tennis and have a bit of fun, get my university stuff paid for. So I went out to the States.
Wow. And how long were you over there for, and how did you come back? Yeah.
3 years. So I went over there, and I was out there for almost 3 years. I played collegiate tennis at a decent standard in top Division 1. I was at UCLA on the West Coast, and basically got lucky and had a most wonderful experience there. But I was lucky because it exposed you to so many different types of sports science, and I cannot tell you how far advanced they are in the UK from a sports science point of view, and from a coaching and maintaining that, because there's so much money involved at collegiate sport. I mean, I was playing at the age of 17. I was playing in front of the crowds, playing tennis in front of crowds of 25 to 30,000 people every week. I mean, we don't even have a stadium over here, that could hold that. That's like Wimbledon's 15,000, but the US collegiate stuff, their football, their American football, the average crowd at an American football collegiate match, top level, is 100,000.
Did you watch a series of documentaries on Netflix called Bad Sport? Oh, it's
I've got that
amazing.
Actually, Mark,
it's a basketball.
It's basketball. I haven't watched it
the
yet.
collegiate basketball. It's basketball. In 1994, they were making $5 million, and these kids were. I won't spoil it, but watch it. It's someone else.
Well, they're still doing that now. They make hundreds of millions from the image rights, shirt sales and stuff. It's a multi-billion dollar.
And these boys, the boys were 19 years old. They were straight in college. They were making nothing themselves. They had no food to eat, and it ended in a mess. I wouldn't spoil it, but it ended in a mess. And it's actually Bad Sport on Netflix. Well worth a watch. I think there's a few sports, but that was an interesting one. Yeah.
They've just started it. They did it in all sports, especially the football. And this year, it's the first time the NCAA's allowed the players have now got to think. They play for the collegiate at university. They keep their image right. Like it's PIL or whatever. So they keep all the image rights of themselves. They get royalties now from shirt sales. It's the first year they've been allowed to do that. And some of these kids are earning $5 to $10 million a year now. They're going to be at college. If they're the top. So
tell me about let's move on to the current. Well, tell me about need to wrap up fairly soon. Really, tell me about your time in Kent Badminton. Yeah. What do you do? What are the challenges? Yeah.
I basically have to end up doing what the chairperson of Kent Badminton or chairwoman of Kent Badminton tells me to do, which is Joe Newson.
Yeah, basically, that's interesting. Yeah.
I run. I for my sins, I organise the Kent senior teams. So I run that per se with a group of other people and a lot of help. We select the teams and we just take care of the SCC weekends. We try and organise some coaching if they want it. Again, I always think you can learn and you should be doing stuff, but not everybody. Some people just want to go along and play their badminton, and I get that.
How many players are you talking about?
So we run that. So we have 3 teams in Kent. We probably run about 30 to 40 players that are in the squads for the 3 teams, because you'll have 5 boys. You have 6. You need at least 6 and 6 to play a match. So new people have injuries not available. So you end up with about 40 people, and you just try and corral and get them into their 3 weekends and pick the best teams, and you'll mix them. Your first team would be outright trying to win. Second team will be trying to win, but it will generally be your merit on seniors. And the third team we use to try and blood our juniors into senior badminton, because that's where we, as a nation, we mess up, is that we don't help the juniors progress into senior badminton, which is obviously a different way of playing badminton.
And is there a lot of club badminton going on in Kent? Is there a lot of separate clubs? And your players, your county players, how many times a week will they play?
We're very lucky in Kent in that we have a lot of players. We're one of the big. We're the top 2 in the top 2 biggest counties as far as members are concerned, players wise. We have a number of clubs, which is growing. And during lockdown, Joe did an amazing job of starting a lot of junior clubs. So we have a few really big clubs that have come out of lockdown. But we've also got some of the seniors now that are playing more club nights. But I think one of the biggest problems our sport faces is that a lot of clubs are becoming match only, which means that the younger generation aren't getting the opportunities to play the older generations and improve and learn from them.
Definitely. And how do you go about? Is there anything in place to grade players across the county? I always bang on about the Irish system where they have A to G across the whole of Ireland, and they have a whole network, and they have competitions. They have every single player in every single club across Ireland. They've worked tirelessly to get the system where every single player across the whole of Ireland has a grade, have their grade, and they constantly aspire to be in the next best grade. And they have an annual competition for each grade at the National Badminton Centre in Dublin, and it's just such an amazing thing. They have a weekend which is purely for the A's to play the A's and the B's to play the B's, and it's in the National Centre and all that stuff. So it's once a year. They know they're competing all year to be in this for their grade across the whole country, which I just think is just amazing.
It's pretty similar to they don't do that. I think that's a great system, and I think it's important that we give motivation like that. Most of the county players will play club matches within Kent and then go off and play tournaments, the BE tournaments around the country, or be aspiring to do as many as they can. Our restricting is really important. I get a chance to see them. You've generally got a grade in, and you've got an idea of the standard. The finite thing comes down to assessing someone when they're playing is such a subjective thing, and no one gets it right all the time. No one gets it wrong, but you just got to hope you've got some, as they do in all sport, is you hope you can spot the talent, and you can hope you can work out who's going to work well with who, or who's going to play well with who, and then you just put that out there and you give it a try, and you learn from that. And I think there's a lot of that maybe because of my sporting background, I'm reasonably good, and some of the other selectors will also put they'll put their views in, and we just try and make the best decisions we think they are.
Oh, I should say that's not about the thing I particularly like about it. It isn't actually. I think there is an issue also in badminton when somebody reaches a level where people think they're as good as they're going to get across the county, and they're forgotten about and dismissed. How many people do you know in their 30s that haven't played for the last 10 years, and then they start playing again because they got dropped at 17, and nobody cares after 17. If you seem to be as a talent at 11 or 12 years old, and they play you get all the coaching, you get all the support, and you get absolutely everything for the next 7 or 8 years, and then somebody realizes you're as good as you're going to get. You're not going to go to nationals. You're not going to go into counties necessarily, and you just get all of a sudden dropped. So the thing I like with the Irish thing is it's every player. It's not like it's not 17, 18, 19. There's guys in their mid 30s, they're kind of 40s. Everybody has a grade. Everybody, and I just think it's amazing, right? Imagine that every single player, because normally I think anyway, somebody that goes to a club, somebody that pays annual subs to go to a club, isn't just a social player. They normally have a competitive, well, certainly in my experience, they have a competitive edge, and they have they like the competition. And the idea that, there is a secretary in every single club that is actually grading and putting a letter on every single player and say, okay, you're such and such, and then giving them, not necessarily forcing them to compete at that level, but, the idea of multiple clubs, all the Gs come together and having local team competitions of the Gs and the Fs, and, it's not a league, but it's just, I just think I think it's great. I think that.
You have something like that in squash. So It's called squash levels. And basically, that's every club player in this country who plays a club match will play another player, and literally you'll get points. And it's you beat someone who's got X amount of bad. It's like a ladder system. I'm a great believer in ladder systems because by the ladder system, you go up or down, and if you don't play, then someone will accumulate points. You'll go down. So, but you find a level. And I think it makes life interesting because you try, everyone who's playing a sport generally is competitive and will want to do the best that they can in that sport. Because otherwise, why would you bother going on a court? You wouldn't bother playing a club match. You wouldn't bother putting some effort in the gym, So I think that system that you've got in Ireland, or the system you've got in squash, where you have the squash level. So if you play someone, you beat them, you can go up. The same as you can go down if you don't play. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea.
Good stuff. And how many times a week do you play badminton now? And what also are you? I know you're on technology. We're talking about your phone and all that stuff, the apps and all that stuff. What are you into your brands? Are you a Yonex man, a Victor man, a Li Ning? What do you think of rackets and stuff like that?
So I basically from from a racket point of view, I'm a Yonex man. I used to use the Z Force 2. I've just gone up to the new one, the Astro, whatever it's called,
That's
Z 100ZZ.
No, I haven't actually got it. So is that the 100ZZ one?
Okay.
Is that with the solid shaft? It's like a blue. It's blue with the solid. That's nice. I like that. Yeah, good. Shaft. Yeah, that's nice. The Z doesn't. Is there an XX as well, or a ZZ? The XX has got a hollow shaft, and the ZZ has got. Yeah, I like the look of that actually.
It's a very stiff shaft. It's an extra stiff shaft because I have my racket strung quite high because I've got what I call soft hand, so I like pinging. I have mine strung at 30, so I have my strings quite strong, and I use the Aerosonic string really thin. So I use the thinnest string, and I'm like, if you break strings, you break strings, and I just crack on. How often do you break a string? I like a really tight string. I go through one every 2 weeks, at least one racket every 2 weeks. Guy strings my racket hates me.
No, he doesn't. Can I tell you, Michael, he doesn't.
Yeah. He does when I turn
We've got a guy.
10 o'clock at night and say,
I've got a guy.
For a living.
We've got a guy who's a local guy from Glasgow that comes over to deliver rackets on the club night, and he doesn't play. He just comes half an hour before the end of the match, and he sits there. He's standing there watching. He's delivered the rackets back that broke the week before, and he literally sits and waits. Honestly, like a vulture. Hanging over, waiting for people. I says, "You're horrible. You're a horrible person. Waiting for people's rackets to break to see if you can take them away to bring them back next week. 15 quid guaranteed every time. Honestly, it's.
I tell you, I go through loads. Of strings, and if I miss hit because I haven't strung so tight, if I miss hit, it's gone, and that happens more than I cared to own up to. So that's the.
And do you buy a reel? Do you buy a reel and just give them to your man? Yeah.
Yes, I buy a reel. I
just
buy a reel and just give it to him, and he just charges me for doing it. Yeah, he's like, there's your reel. I'll get on with it. And Graham, I had a classic one because I've just switched from the Z Force 2 to this new racket, and I'd played and I'd got 2 before I bought the other 3. So I've got 5 in total. But before I'd bought the other 3, and he was going on holiday, I think 24 hours later, and I said to him, and it was just before the MCC thing. We were going to play up at Milton Keynes, so. I said, I've broken a string, but what I didn't tell him, I'd got 3 new rackets. So I put the one with the broken strings into the plastic that the other rackets should come into, and I just handed them over, and he just, there's a few choice words if you say that. You said you'd broken a string. I said, I've broken a string. So, well, what are they? I said, well, they just happen to be with that racket. They haven't got any strings. They just need
Big problem, that's brilliant. Well, listen, I'll let you get on with your night. It's been great to meet you. Great to meet you, Mike. I really enjoyed it. I love the chats. I love making new friends in badminton. We're all the same big family of badminton lovers, don't you think? I think it's, and if you're ever in Scotland and when I'm down in Kent, are you going to the All England?
Yes, I'm going to the All England. Yes.
Well, absolutely. We'll meet up because I'm down for the week. I'm down on I'm coming down the Tuesday night and staying till the Sunday. So it's
I'm there. I think I'm there on the Thursday and the Sunday. I'm there. I know I'm there for the finals. I got my tickets in early for that. So yeah, no, I'll look forward to meeting up with you.
Great, lovely, nice to meet you. Cheers.
Oh, God, yeah.
Take care. Speak soon. Thanks for your time. Right. Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Cheers, Michael.